Imagine how it would feel to live in a world where your supposed sins are tattooed onto your body. In the 18th century, this was what women found guilty of prostitution had to go through. It was a world where everything revolved around social reputation, with brutal, humiliating, and permanent punishment for those who fell out of these standards. Today, we investigate one of the most grim, least-known areas of history to understand how branding was an imposed punishment on prostitutes, never to punish, but to brand lives forever. Stay tuned as we reveal unsettling details about this grim past, where judgment, fear, and power combined in scars deeper than skin deep. Life in the 18th century was cruel and carried an especially negative character against the bottom of society. Women were forced into prostitution as a means of survival for many variables of poverty, unemployment, and overall societal stigmatization. Though it was the women who would bear the consequences, men were frequent participants and often facilitated this trade. Once caught or suspected, these women were seen as outcasts and a moral threat to society, and hence awarded severe punishments. The most infamous of these was branding, a painful, permanent mark that would brand them throughout their lives as fallen women. In many European cities, the mark was intended as a warning, an attempt at social control through shame. It marked them, defined their identities forever. Imagine the scene. Removed from the unsanitary, overcrowded prisons, these women were transported before officials who would determine their fate. Branding wasn't simply punitive, but was meant to give the instance a permanent mark. Branding irons hot to red-orange were pressed against the skin, usually with specific, designated letters included in the country's markings, P for prostitute or V for vagabond. For instance, in England, the letter P was branded on a woman's thumb or cheek, an unequivocal scar that followed her wherever she went. Similarly, in France, there was branding to make such women recognizable at first sight. Imagine the pain, seared flesh, and the knowledge that this symbol would segregate them from society forever. It was not only punishment at that time, but taking away their future, keeping them as outcasts. The physical pain of branding was brutal, but the psychic scars were often far worse. Branded women, shunned and unable to find work or shelter, were forced further into the margins. This mark of shame made any chance of escaping their circumstances almost impossible. They were trapped, not just by poverty, but by stigma burned into skin. Think of the isolation that would be. Think about trying to find dignity, respect when every glance from a passerby reminded you of society's judgment. For many of these women, branding was a life sentence of shame. Even as they leave their former life behind them, the brand marks them as a sinner, judged by society every day. But here, the matters start to get even more sinister. To many members of the public, branding represented a well-deserved punishment. Because many were forced by conditions of economic desperation into this profession, publicly branding these women would save morality and virtue. Society turned a blind eye toward the men who got involved in all of it and channeled its judgment upon these women alone. To many of those women, branding carried a sense of punishment and hypocrisy all in one. It speaks to society's willingness to exploit, judge, and condemn those who could not defend themselves, a vivid reminder of how totally unforgiving the world at large could be. So why should we remember these stories? Because they remind us of the dark consequences of judgment and stigmatization. These women's lives were defined by a single moment, a decision imposed on them by society. But today, we can choose to look at history as a lesson, a reminder for us to stand up against cruelties, judgment, and injustice. So the next time that scar we bear in our minds crosses your thoughts, remember that kindness, compassion, and understanding make us who we are. No one needs to be branded by their past. We all have the power to write a better future, one where humanity matters more than harsh judgment. As this uncomfortable chapter of history closes, times were not exactly a Sunday stroll in a park, but rather more like a walk up some dark alley. Imagine strutting around with your supposed sins literally inked onto your skin. Talk about an icebreaker, but definitely not the small talk anyone would want at a dinner party. For as much as social reputation counted for in this world, Shockingly brutal punishments awaited women labeled immoral. Rather than finding any form of redemption, they found themselves permanently marked living, breathing reminders that this society was anything but forgiving. Keep asking questions, keep laughing, and remember, the past may bear scars, but our future can be tattooed with compassion and empathy. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more deep dives into the darkest and most fascinating corners of history. Comment below. Do you think we've moved past the days of public shaming, or do echoes of it still linger today? Until next time, stay curious. Thank you for watching.